Hello, everybody. Welcome into Penn State Football 365. My name is Dylan Callaghan-Croley. If you're a returning listener from College Football 365, well, we have some news for you guys. Depending if you're a Penn State fan or not, it's probably good. Restart.
And we
We're off to
restart.
a great start.
Business is booming. Let's go.
All right, 3, 2, 1. Hello, everybody. Welcome into Penn State Football 365. And no, you're not on the wrong podcast. If you're coming in expecting to hear College Football 365, well, there is some news for you. If you're a Penn State fan, you'll probably like the news. If you're not a Penn State fan, well, we still hope you stick around and listen to the podcast and stay subscribed to us. But that news is the podcast has joined Nittany Nation, rivals Penn State side, and we are going to be an extension of Nittany Nation here over the future, and we're going to be talking on the field. We're going to talk recruiting. We're going to talk everything in between. So that's the exciting news with the podcast. No longer College Football 365, but now Penn State Football 365. We'll be talking about Penn State football 365 days a year on Twitter and social media, and we'll be talking about it every week, sometimes twice a week. But enough of that. For our new listeners, our Penn State fans coming over from Nittany Nation, or perhaps you found us on YouTube, Twitter, or any other social media platform, it's probably a good time to introduce the rest of the Penn State Football 365 team here. And we'll start with Marty Leap up here. And Marty, I'll allow you to introduce yourself or to our old listeners, reintroduce yourself. But yeah, Marty, how about you introduce yourself to our listeners?
Yeah, thank you guys for listening. We're excited to be here. We're really excited for this opportunity. I have covered Penn State football in one form or fashion, dating back to 2011 now for various blogs and sites. Lifelong Penn State football fan. I currently write for Black Shoe Diaries, where I've been since the spring of 2018, which is where Dylan and I met and became friends. Really, actually, we go back before that. Our time together, Victory Bell rings. But yeah, no, we're excited to be here, and it's going to be exciting to have this opportunity to talk about Penn State football with you guys, and we hope that we give you something that is interesting and intriguing, and that you enjoy listening to.
Absolutely, Marty is a great writer and comes from a great side, obviously. But yeah, so we got Marty, who is not a professional journalist by trade, but is somebody who will bring us both an objective look at stuff, but also have some of that fan feel to it. He'll have some great insight. And I'll move on to Anthony, who is a Penn State graduate. So, Anthony, how about you introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you everybody for listening. So my name is Anthony Hazan, and I'm going to provide more of a different perspective to this podcast. First of all, I'm really excited to be here, and I've actually been really good friends with Dylan since childhood. We met back in the 7th grade. Me and him both started doing podcasts together about a year and a half ago, back when we were getting pretty much no listens, and I'm excited with the progress that we've made, and we've really come a long way from that point. So I am a class of 2019 Penn State graduate. I've been a Penn State fan ever since I really enrolled in the school. I've been a diehard. I was at the Ohio State game in 2016, the Michigan game in 2017, and just, I've rode the highs and the lows of Penn State, like both of you guys have as well. So I'm super excited to bring a different perspective to this podcast and kind of represent what the fan would think, while also providing my own insights and perspectives as well.
Yeah. And Anthony, if you're a returning listener, you guys know Anthony's insight on college football and his thoughts, and he does bring some really great opinions. And looking forward to having him here on the podcast and as well as with Marty as part of the extended Nittany Nation family and team. But Nittany Nation subscribers or any non-subscribers who read our free stuff might know who I am. I'm Dylan Callaghan-Croley. I kind of am a jack of all trades here at Nittany Nation. I cover football on the field. I cover on the recruiting trail, everything in between. I cover really whatever needs to be done at Nittany Nation. I'm kind of, like I said, a jack of all trades. Also with Rivals, I cover Minnesota recruiting and Oregon State recruiting. So I am usually pretty busy throughout the week with recruiting stuff or writing up stuff for the upcoming Penn State football season. And when we get into the season, will be a ton of content out there. We have a team that is growing currently. I hired a couple of new guys who we hope to have on in the future here. But yeah, I'm excited to get this podcast started and looking forward to it. And if you're not a subscriber yet on Nittany Nation, I hope you give us a chance. We're providing a lot of great content, a lot of great recruiting insight. And really, the fun is just beginning, and we are going to do some really great things here in the upcoming months. But let's get into today's podcast, fellas. It is a shorter podcast than future podcasts. It is a little bit of a quiet week. Obviously, we're here in the first week of June. Not much is going on, obviously, on the recruit. It's weird. It's a little bit of a quiet period. Or the calm before the storm, I like to say, on the recruiting trail, just nationally. Coaches are around the country this week at different camps. James Franklin was at Ferris State today for a massive camp they were holding with a bunch of Division I colleges attending. But starting this weekend is really when a lot of schools, including Penn State, are going to begin hosting official visitors from across the country. And Penn State, like I said, does get that started this week with one of their top targets on their recruiting board, regardless position. That is defensive tackle Jason Moore out of DeMatha Catholic in Maryland. This is, like I said, one of Penn State's top targets overall. 6'5", 260 pounds. I said defensive end. He's a defensive tackle. My apologies. Number 44th overall prospect on Rivals, number 1 defensive tackle and the top player in the state of Maryland. This is a guy that Penn State has been recruiting for nearly his entire high school career now. Got his offer from Penn State back in, I believe, in November of 2019. And they've been recruiting him hard ever since. They identified him as a top target back then and have kept pushing. We'll see if it pays off. Notre Dame right now is the perceived leader to land more. They do have, I believe, a couple future, 2 future casts on Rivals in favor of the Fighting Irish, including one from Nittany Nation publisher Richie Snyderite. So Penn State has a little bit of an uphill battle here with Notre Dame. Marcus Freeman, since taking over that program in January, has made Jason Moore a top priority. And it's paid off for the Fighting Irish. But Penn State's going to get their first crack here at Moore in terms of official visits, guys. And this is a pretty big one for Penn State, to say the least, arguably their most important official visitor this month.
Yeah, Penn State's starting off with a bang this month. Obviously, it's a little bit of a quieter weekend as they have a lot of recruit camps this weekend as well up in State College. So they focus on the camps a little bit right now. But like you said, Jason Moore has been a top priority for years now for James Franklin and the staff. I actually don't mind that they have the first official visit for him, just because, like you said, Notre Dame is the perceived favorite, and he will be in South Bend next weekend for Marcus Freeman and his staff. And like you said, they are the perceived favorite. So it would not shock me at all if the visits he has after that, he doesn't even get to those. So for Penn State to be able to get in there and lay it all out on the line for him, put their chips on the table and say, hey, this is what we got for you. And to be able to do that, I think that's important moving forward. So we'll see. And if they could turn the tide in this one, that would be an incredible comeback for Penn State if they can do it.
Yeah, and before you go, Marty, let me say one thing. I should mention Moore did release a top 5 last month, which consisted of, in no order, Maryland, Michigan, Notre Dame, Ohio State, and Penn State. So far in Rivals, we have him scheduled for 4 official visits. Penn State this weekend, Notre Dame, like Anthony said, next weekend, Michigan on the 17th, Ohio State on the 24th. We'll see if he gets to Maryland on an official visit. I think the Terrapins are probably the longest shot at getting more. But I think Ohio State is a team here also to watch very closely. Larry Johnson, one of the best defensive line coaches in the history of the game, especially over the last 20 years. We know what he's done at Ohio State. We know what he's done at Penn State. He recruits the DMV fantastically. And obviously his success with defensive line recruiting speaks for itself. So we'll see if Ohio State's able to come in and swoop more out from Notre Dame and Penn State. But yeah, right now it's Notre Dame as a perceived leader, like we said earlier. But I think Penn State and Ohio State are those two teams battling out right behind Notre Dame. But Marty, what's your thoughts on Moore's official visit? Do you mind Penn State here again, the first visit? What's your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I mean, like Anthony said, getting the first visit here is not necessarily a bad thing. You know, in the world of college football recruiting, when it's official visit season, you always want to either have the first visit to set the bar or the last visit to make that final impact. So, you know, you'd much rather get the first visit than get somewhere in the middle. Like Anthony said, probably a good chance he doesn't make it past the Penn State Notre Dame official visits. Right now, the Fighting Irish definitely look like the team to beat. But, you know, if there's one thing anyone out there should know about James Franklin and his staff, you can never count them out when they get a kid to campus. There have been countless times when Franklin's been here and get a player to campus. You don't expect Penn State to be in it, and they make it happen. John Scott Jr., also very low-key, has been a tremendous recruiter since coming on as defensive line coach. So I wouldn't count the Nittany Lions out completely in this. I do agree they have an uphill battle this weekend, but I wouldn't say they have no shot either at landing more.
Yeah, I wouldn't call it an absolute no shot, but definitely an uphill battle. And we'll see. Ohio State getting that last visit is really intriguing to me. The Buckeyes always hit it out of the park with official visits, as most schools do. They're official visits. They are expected to be home runs every time. But I definitely think Ohio State probably has some of the best official visits in the country. And it's going to be interesting to see if NIL comes into play here. If it does, I mean, Ohio State's a school that can make NIL work. Penn State, we know where Penn State stands NIL-wise. Michigan is in an okay place by what I've been told NIL-wise. Notre Dame, not familiar with what they have going on there, but we know Ohio State. While Ryan Day has been asking for more money, he actually just asked today Ohio State boosters and such, saying they need $13 million to keep their roster together. It'll be interesting to see how that all works out. Moore does not have any commitment date currently set. I personally think he'll take all his official visits, but it's going to be one to keep a close eye on. It'll be interesting to see the reports coming out of each official visit. We'll have to see how it goes. But Penn State gets the first crack at him this weekend. And I think one of the more interesting notes on it, or important notes on it, I should say, is he is the only uncommitted official visitor on campus this weekend. Chop Robinson, the transfer from Maryland, is also taking an official visit this weekend. We were able to confirm that this week on Nittany Nation. And having Chop there is, I think, more so just making him an extension of the staff. It's a Maryland kid who recently committed to Penn State. You want him to get into Moore's ear, tell him everything that he personally liked about Penn State that made him want to transfer into Penn State. And just really, like I said, use him as an extension of the coaching staff. But not having any other non-committed official visitors on campus this week allows the Penn State coaching staff to give more a true one-on-one official visit where he is their sole priority. He has all the attention of the staff. And I think that could potentially pay off, but we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, I would 100% agree with you, Dylan. I wouldn't downplay at all the potential impact that Chop Robinson could have on Jason Moore. You know, Chop Robinson, back when he was a recruit, he was a 5-star out of Quince Orchard High School in Maryland, not too far from where Jason Moore plays at DeMatha. So he probably, has had contact with Jason Moore before, and he could potentially have an influence on him this weekend. Obviously for Chop, this visit is much more of a formality. He's already committed to Penn State, but he's entitled to an official visit as someone that was in the transfer portal. So, this is just him taking that visit, getting back with the staff, getting more comfortable probably with what his role and responsibility is going to be once he gets on campus in a few weeks, I believe. So it'll be interesting to see how that dynamic plays out, like you mentioned.
And Marty, any last thoughts on Jason Moore's recruitment or official visit, I should say?
No, I agree with what you guys said. I mean, I'm sure it's not a coincidence. This is the weekend they're bringing Chop Robinson in for his. Like you said, 2 Maryland guys, 2 Maryland defensive linemen. Let them do some peer recruiting. And again, I would not count Penn State out here. They have an uphill battle, but it's not over. And if they do pull this off, it would be just an absolute tremendous effort by James Franklin and John Scott Jr.
Absolutely. And moving off, Jason Moore. Well, we want to talk about them this week. We'll talk about them in the next week. It is going to be a busy month for Penn State in terms of official visits. I don't have the exact number off the top of my head. Plus, official visits could be added or taken away really at any moment. Penn State just saw one of their official visits. They're going to host Alabama offensive lineman Kobe Keenum for an official visit later this month on the 10th, but he ended up releasing a top 5 that did not include Penn State, and he is no longer taking that official visit to Happy Valley. But it is close to about 40 official visitors currently for this month. Just one this upcoming weekend, 2 if you count Chop Robinson. But the next couple of weeks are going to be really busy in State College, busy for James Franklin and his staff. And we'll have plenty to talk about next week with a couple key guys next week on campus, including 2 commitments to quarterback Marcus Stokes and wide receiver Johnny Shakur. But also notable names next week include running back Treyon Webb, offensive lineman Evan Link, defensive lineman Tyreek Blandon, linebacker Corey Lucius, and safety Dakari Nelson. But plenty of names to talk about over the next couple of weeks. It's going to be a pretty busy month. Be sure to stick here on Nittany Nation for everything on those official visits. And we'll be talking about them on the podcast as well. Anthony, what you got?
Yeah, I just want to make a quick comment. A lot of Southern players coming up for official visits in this cycle. You see a bunch of guys from Florida next week. Alabama's got a big presence on there. Penn State is definitely doing work in the South right now, and I think that's worth commenting on.
Absolutely. Penn State's recruiting efforts over the entire James Franklin era, but really over the last few years has seemed much more national based rather than regional based. I mean, they still do a lot of their work in Pennsylvania, in the DMV, in a little bit of the Midwest, but they are really they've been into the South in Florida, obviously having the connections they have in Cider and now obviously with Manny Diaz as well is big for those for Florida recruiting, and they've also been dipping into Texas more and more as we've seen. Which I mean, if you can get footholds in Texas and Florida, you're going to put yourself in a pretty good position to stack up on some pretty good talent. Because I mean, if we're talking about states that produce elite talent, it's California, it's Florida, it's Texas. And if you get Georgia, if you get 2 out of those 4, you're in a pretty good position. And it's not like they don't have any footholdings in Georgia either. They can recruit Georgia pretty well at times and have had some success there. Not as much as Florida or Texas, but they've had success in Georgia as well.
Absolutely, very well said there.
Marty, any last thoughts on that?
No, I agree. I mean, they quietly have done a nice job out of the South as long as James Franklin's been there. I mean, just you go back to some of his first recruiting classes, Grant Haley, Christian Campbell, Torrance Brown, all guys who played big roles in the Big Ten championship winning team who came from the South. And, you guys mentioned J1 Cider. You don't add J1 Cider to your staff without the expectation you're going to be able to recruit in Florida. We've seen Penn State recruit in Florida, probably as well as any state north of the Mason-Dixon, or any school, north of the Mason-Dixon stands, maybe Ohio State, since Cider's been there. So it's just good to see them continue to get these kids on campus. And, I keep harping on it, but few staffs do a better job once they get kids on campus than Penn State. You get a kid on campus, you've always got the opportunity. So just keep getting these kids on campus. And that's why you see every cycle Penn State land 2, 3, 4 guys from the South that you normally wouldn't expect them to land.
Absolutely. All right, let's move on to some other notable recruiting topics. We got 2 here today. The first one is Rivals 250 offensive lineman Samson Okunlola. He released his top 9 here on Thursday afternoon. And the Nittany Lions did make the cut for the 4-star recruit, a number 64 player in the country overall, a top player out of Massachusetts, up there at Thayer Academy in Braintree. And he's the 7th best offensive tackle in the country per Rivals rankings. Making the cut for him is Oregon, Michigan State, Oklahoma, Alabama, Miami, Georgia, Florida, Ohio State, and like I said, Penn State. This is a kid who at the Rivals Camp Series in Philadelphia won the offensive lineman MVP. I got to see him there live, and this kid is an absolute unit. He was a beast at the camp. He almost overmatched, I think, everybody he went up against. I think this is a kid you can build your offensive line around for 3-4 years, and he has potential, I think, to be a day 1 or day 2 NFL draft pick in 4 to 5 years, 4 to 5 years. This is a big time recruit. I wouldn't say Penn State has a great shot at landing him right now, but as Marty kind of just said, sometimes the name of the game in recruiting is just to get these kids on campus. And once you get them on campus, you let your official visits, you let your coaching staff do the work, and maybe you go out there and you land one of these guys people don't expect you to land. There's always a couple every cycle. Penn State has pulled surprises in the past. But like I said, I don't necessarily expect him to choose Penn State in the end here. But at least making the cut is big for them.
Yeah, like you said, you don't necessarily expect Penn State to land a player like Samson Okunlola, but he's been on campus multiple times before. Clearly, there's a lot of mutual interest there between him and the Nittany Lions. Excuse me, and just continuing to get him back to campus and to get on official visits is big. Do I think Penn State's going to land him? No. Do I think Penn State's going to be in it until the end with a legitimate opportunity to potentially land him? Absolutely. And I think one thing too that oftentimes we get overlooked in recruiting is even if you don't land a kid, getting them on campus multiple times for official visits, all of this, you cultivate those relationships with high school coaches, with high school programs, with, trainers in the area, all of that sort of thing, which in the long run can pay off. And, in Connecticut, not as big as it is in some other states, but still, it doesn't hurt to get a kid on campus 2, 3, 4 times, even if you don't land him, especially when they're a major talent like Okunlola, and be able to continue to cultivate those relationships, because you never know when those relationships could potentially pay off down the road.
Absolutely. And I do think that Phil Troutwine's, he came from Boston College. And I think having those connections up in Massachusetts probably did help Penn State here early on in his recruitment. But you're going up against, and not that Penn State isn't a big dog in college football or on the recruiting trail, but you're going up against some serious competition for him. And these are the recruiting battles that your staff gets paid to win. So we'll have to see what happens here in the end, but it's going to be intriguing to watch over the next couple of months. Anthony, any thoughts?
Yeah, Samson Okunlola is a kid that he's got all the big hitters after him. I forget if you named the top 9. I don't think you did, but he's got like Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State. Pretty much all the big schools are pursuing this kid hard. I know Rivals has him as a 4-star right now. I think that's a little low for him. I think he's going to need a bump pretty soon. I think he's a guy that's going to trend into 5-star territory by the time this is all said and done. He's legit, and he's been dominating camps left, right, and center recently. Everywhere he's been, I think he's won MVP for the most part. But, yeah, for Penn State right now, the name of the game is just try to get an official visit for this kid. You're in the top 9. See if you can crack that top 5. Get this kid back on campus as much as you possibly can. And if you're able to do that, you have a shot. Okunlola, I don't think he's in a rush to make a decision anytime soon. So this one might possibly go into the season, possibly towards signing day. So if you're Penn State, you can just linger around, try to get him on campus, keep in touch. You never know. I think it's a long shot, like you guys said, but sometimes if you linger around long enough, good things can happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And he does not have any, at least publicly has not stated any date he wishes to commit by. And worth noting, I don't think we mentioned it, but Jason Moore also has no commitment date currently set, at least publicly as well. The one thing I do like about Samson is his nickname. At least I didn't know this until he posted on his graphic here. But his nickname apparently is the Pancake Honcho, which I just love. That's a great nickname for an offensive lineman.
I just want to say, if we could somehow get him and Zach Owens, we could have Flapjack on one side and Pancake Honcho on the other side. That is a beautiful left tackle, right tackle tandem, and I would love to see that happen.
Listen, if your left tackle and right tackle tandem is Flapjack and Pancake, and you don't win like 10 games a year or running for a zillion yards, that's your fault, because you got Flapjack and Pancake. What more could you possibly ask for?
Both future all-pro names right there. Yeah, all right. So that's Samson Okunlola. Nittany Nation fans, you'll get used to it. I am sometimes bad with pronunciations, but I will work on them. That being said,
that's an understatement.
The other notable news, Penn State recruiting wise lately, is it comes from Rivals national recruit analyst and actually Rivals national recruiting leader, you could say. He's the head honcho, Adam Gorney. He actually, if I can find it here, made a prediction this on a Thursday regarding the top 10 uncommitted cornerbacks / safeties in the country, and he has predicted not a future cast yet, I believe, but he has predicted 4-star safety Dakari Nelson from Selma, Alabama, to land with Penn State right now. And this is a free article out on Rivals, so if you are wanting to go look at it yourselves, you can probably find it around the Rivals homepage. But I'll read what he says here about Nelson's recruitment. Tennessee, Clemson, and Penn State seem to have made a leap in Nelson's recruitment, but it's a little hard to read because the Selma, Alabama prospect still has an extensive top list. The family feel Clemson stands out. Tennessee is making him a priority, he feels, and another visit to Penn State on June 10th is definitely going to be really important. Staying in the South somewhere makes a whole lot of sense, but Nelson loved his first visit to Happy Valley, and the Nittany lines can have the edge right now. So it's not a hardcore, this is what's going to happen prediction. No future casting yet. But either way, if Penn State was able to go in Alabama, we just talked about Penn State going in the South and grabbing kids. Nelson is the type of kid you go in the South and get. If you're able to steal him away from SEC teams, that is a huge, huge steal for Penn State if it does come to fruition. He is taking an official visit, like I said earlier, next weekend, June 10th. That'll be a big one to watch. But, I mean, this is a kid that we currently at Rivals have as the 78th best prospect in the country, 10th best player at Alabama, 4th best safety, 6'3", 198 pounds, 5.9 Rivals rating, over 20 offers, including Auburn, Clemson, Florida State, Michigan, Oklahoma, Oregon. I mean, this isn't like Penn State's going up against a bunch of smaller SEC schools or any other programs around the country. They're going up against some big dogs here for Nelson. And like I said, if they can go out and get Nelson out from Alabama, that would be huge for them. I do think at his size, he may project to be a linebacker at the next level instead of safety. But the talent, the athleticism is there for him to go into a linebacker position at the next level and still be productive and potentially be a pretty good starting linebacker for you down the road. But that's just my take. Whoever wants to go first on this one.
Yeah, I think you took the words right out of my mouth there, actually, with your last point. That was the one thing I was going to say. The hang up on him is probably that he's a little bit of a tweener. You know, with his size, like you said, he's pushing 6'3". He's about 200 pounds. You know, at that point in your high school career, is he more of a safety at the next level? Is he a linebacker? Is he a combination of both? I think he could do really well at Penn State as more of a box safety closer to the line of scrimmage. So I think he'd fit really well in Penn State's defense. And I think that's a big part of why they're pushing really hard for him. So I think next weekend's going to be a huge visit. I don't know if he has any other visits set up. The only one I've seen so far is Penn State, but who knows? I could be wrong there. But I think next weekend's going to be a huge weekend for him, and I think that'll really dictate the tone of his recruitment moving forward.
I'm looking at his rivals profile right now. The only official visit scheduled is Penn State. Now that other official visits may just not be updated on his profile yet, but be sure to update that next week if any are added. But yeah, great points there, Anthony, especially with him, his potential at the next level. But at the same time, Penn State hasn't shied away from having bigger defensive backs or safeties in the past. So perhaps they keep him there, but I guess it really depends. Is he a true 6'3", and where he is weight wise when he comes in, where he is weight wise wherever he ends up going at the next level. But definitely, I think projects to a linebacker right now, or is at least leaning that way. Marty, any thoughts on Nelson?
No, just I would add it would be a tremendous land by the staff, and whether you want to talk safety, you want to talk linebacker, you want to talk a hybrid, whatever it is, Penn State could real sneakily put together a heck of a class for that group. I mean, you look at your recruiting class, you already have Conrad Hussey on board out of Thomas Aquinas in Florida. And anyone who follows high school football knows that there's few schools in the country produce better defensive back talent than St. Thomas Aquinas. His teammate King Mack, a player that Penn State seems to be gaining a lot of steam with and fast on the recruiting trail at safety. Yeah. You have Cam Selden in Virginia, who, just one of the most athletically gifted players in the country. And you throw Nelson into the group, and this could be a really, really good recruiting class for Penn State on that safety box linebacker safety combo, whatever label you want to give these guys. This could be a really strong group in this recruiting class.
Yeah, and I was looking at something on our forums quickly. I'm not sure if you mentioned it, but another name to know at that safety or / defensive back position is Musa Kane out of Blairstown in New Jersey. Penn State's really in a good spot for him. Richie actually put in a future cast for Musa Kane this past week, and I may be following suit there pretty close to soon myself, I should say. But Penn State's in a really good spot for Kane as well. He cut his list down to 3 schools in Penn State, Oklahoma, and Duke. I think it's probably more of really a 2-team race between Penn State and Oklahoma. But I don't think you can rule out Duke just yet. But I think Penn State overall is in a great spot for Kane. Anthony Poindexter, Penn State's staff, recruited Kane's brother to Purdue. And I think so. He knows the family already. He has that established relationship. He's done a great job with Musa already. And I think Penn State's in a really good spot for him as well. But I 100% agree, Marty. They have a chance to put together a really great defensive back class here in 2023. And just a quick update on the class as a whole. Penn State's current 2023 class sits at 12 commitments and 3rd in the team recruiting ranks. So Penn State putting together another strong class here. It will drop a little bit by the end of the cycle, but another class here that Penn State's going to be able to use to stay near the top of the Big Ten and give themselves a chance to compete with the Ohio States, the Michigans, so on and so forth.
Yeah, like you said, just goes to show they have a lot of options right now in that defensive back room, and they're putting together a nice class. So hopefully they can round it out nicely.
Yeah, one other thing out on the recruiting note is one thing James Franklin has yet to really do at Penn State is stack those back-to-back, great to borderline elite classes. Yep. No matter what kind of rankings they're going to go off of, that 2022 class was elite. It was one of the absolute best in the country. 2023 appears to be following suit. You start stacking classes like that, the talent to beat anyone and contend with anyone in the country will be there. And, barring something just going catastrophically wrong between now and early December, it looks like Penn State's going to finally stack those classes back to back, which is something that really has plagued Franklin during his time. So, I think that is reason just for a lot of optimism in general with the program moving forward.
Absolutely. We'll see how it ends here over the next it is officially June. So we got a little bit over 6 months until the December signing period. And I guess now 8 months until the February National Signing Day. So still plenty of time for things to change. The one thing to watch is we are kind of in that period where Penn State every year seems to rattle off a ton of commitments. Maybe it just feels like it, but over the last couple of years, I would have to go back and check. It does seem like Penn State, by the time the season rolls around, is normally pushing towards the end of how many kids they're going to take in their recruiting class. And over the, say, from September to February, only add in maybe 5 or 6 other kids. But if Penn State's recruiting class by the time the season starts is what they have, I said, 12 commitments right now. If Penn State's recruiting class is I wouldn't be shocked if it's at close to 20 by the time the season rolls around, maybe that 17, 18, 19 range.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Would not shock me one bit. Like I remember just last year, I think they pulled like 11 commits in the month of July. It was an absolutely insane run for James Franklin and the staff. I don't think it'll be quite that crazy this year. If it is, great. I'd absolutely love it. But I mean, I still think they can rattle off 5, 6, 7 commits in the next couple of months pretty easily.
Absolutely. All right. Marty, any final thoughts before we go into our final topics?
No, I was going to say, I agree with Anthony. I mean, this is the recruiting, coaching staff. It's always like to have a lot of the recruiting ends tied up before the start of the season. Maybe we see it again this year. And like I said, they're putting together another tremendous class, which is what you want to see. Stack those classes.
All right, our final topics of the day. Penn State on Wednesday released the themes for all of their 2022 home games. I will be in the Beaver Stadium press box for almost all those, maybe except one. But yeah, they released all their themes for the schedule. They did it in a cool way by featuring their team managers for each position. So let's go through those real quick. September 10th against Ohio, Penn State will be running their 107,000 family reunion. So just their traditional, everybody's back in the stadium for the first time this season. Should be great to see everybody back in Beaver Stadium. September 24th is the annual Thon game, which is always a great time. It's great to see Thon get underway every year. Of course, leading up to the dance marathon in February. All U Day, September 31st against Northwestern. And then we get into the 2 games everybody cares about, starting October 22nd. So Penn State almost doesn't have a home game there for a month. They do have a bye week there in between. But October 22nd against Minnesota, Penn State will be having their annual whiteout. First time since I believe I saw 2009 that it won't be a Big Ten opponent named Michigan or Ohio State. Of course, they hosted Alabama and Auburn in 2 whiteouts as well in between that period. But any other time it's been a Big Ten team since then, it's always been Ohio State and Michigan. Can either of you name the last Big Ten team not named Ohio State and Michigan to play in the whiteout?
Illinois.
No.
Iowa?
Iowa.
Okay, yeah. It is one of the 2. The AJ Claiborne blocked punt game.
Yes. One that Penn State fans probably would like to forget. But Penn State hosts Minnesota October 22nd in the whiteout. A lot of people are upset that it's not Ohio State. It's understandable. Ohio State is the biggest home game of the year for Penn State this year. That will be a stripe out. Now, why Minnesota? Well, the truth is, it all goes back to Fox and what Fox wanted to do with the Penn State-Ohio State game. Penn State-Ohio State game falls on October 29th, which is also going to be in the middle of the World Series. And right now there is a World Series game. I forget which one it is, scheduled for October 29th. Anthony is telling me it's game 2 of the World Series for October 29th. The fact is Fox is going to put the World Series ahead of any college football game every day of the week, and understandably so. That being said, Fox wants Penn State Ohio State to be the big noon Saturday game of the week that week. And it while not official, it is leaning towards that. And if it's not, it would be quite shocking. I think a 3:30 kickoff there could still make sense. But right now, I believe everything's pointed towards big noon Saturday, Penn State, Ohio State on October 29th. Understandably, on Penn State's side, they didn't want to use the whiteout for a day game. We've seen Penn State whiteouts during the day in the past. They just don't bring the same energy and intimidation level that we see in the night games. So Penn State, instead of using the whiteout for a day game, is going to use stripe out for Ohio State, which I think is still going to create a good atmosphere. The stripe out games have had great atmospheres in the past. And so I think that could still work out in Penn State's favor. Obviously, it's not the whiteout. But at the end of the day, I don't think Penn State fans necessarily need the whiteout to get pumped up for an Ohio State game. Ohio State, that is the program in the Big Ten. That is the team you're going and shooting your best shot at every year. Penn State fans, I think, are going to be up and ready for that one, whether it's a noon kick or a 3:30 kick. But going back to the Minnesota game, a lot of fans aren't happy that it's the whiteout. But at the end of the day, I think this could be a sneaky good game. There's a chance both teams head into this game undefeated. And I think it could be a tremendous game. There's a lot of different factors here. The Kirk Ciarrocca game. He's now back as the offensive coordinator at Minnesota. He spent one season at Penn State, obviously, got let go, and Mike Yurcich came in to replace him. So that'll be an interesting aspect of it, Yurcich for Ciarrocca. But like I said, these are two teams that could I wouldn't say easily, because facing Purdue to open the season and going down to Auburn is going to be really two tough challenges for Penn State. But it's reasonable to think that both these teams could be undefeated heading to this game on October 22nd.
Yeah, it's definitely out of the equation, and you look at it, Dylan, I think it is important to mention the Ohio State thing. Fans are going to be jacked up for the Ohio State game no matter what. Yeah. It's the most important game on the schedule every year. You go back to, I think, 2014, I want to say, every year since then, or 2015, every year since then, outside of this past year, the winner of Penn State Ohio State is going to win the Big Ten. Like it is what it is. They're the two best programs in the conference. The Minnesota thing, personally, I'm excited. I have somehow never been to a whiteout game before. I have my tickets. I'm ready to go for this year. And then Minnesota games, low-key, got a lot of good storylines. You mentioned Kirk Ciarrocca. Yeah. You go back to the last time they played in 2019 was one of the best games of the year in college football that season. Penn State went in ranked number 4 in the college football playoff rankings. Undefeated. Minnesota was undefeated. The Golden Gophers, led by Tanner Morgan, who would lead them into Beaver Stadium.
That's another great storyline. It's the battle of the 6-year quarterbacks. Yeah.
Penn State, led by Sean Clifford, who will lead them into this game. Damn near came back and pulled off an almost miraculous come from behind victory. If the turf monster does not get Jahan Dotson, Penn State most likely comes back and wins that game. And, that season very possibly, if not likely, ends in a playoff berth for Penn State then. So there are a lot of low-key good storylines in this game. If nothing else, it's the whiteout. It's going to be prime time. It's going to be Herbie and Fowler. Herbie's going to be in the booth doing what he does best and standing out over how great the whiteout is. It's going to be great. It's going to be fun. It's going to be continue to be one of the best traditions, not just in college football, but in all sports. And you know what? It'll be a heck of a game, because I think there's definitely a path to where Penn State and Minnesota go into that game, both teams in first place in their respective divisions in the Big Ten. So it could be a game that, whiteout aside, could have a lot on the line.
Sure. And before I let you talk, Anthony, let me get let me get both of those schedules out here, since we are talking about possibly both being undefeated heading into that game. So I kind of just already went over Penn State's schedule, but they start off on the road Thursday night, September 1st at Purdue. Then they're at home against Ohio, on the road at Auburn, home against Central Michigan, home against Northwestern. Now, the big game for Penn State, possibly being undefeated, is going to come right the week before Minnesota. And that's going to be at Michigan. Penn State has struggled at Michigan in the past. But we'll see what happens here. That's going to be really interesting to watch. Of course, their last game in Ann Arbor, they did win. That's obviously that's going to be the toughest challenge. And that's a big one for Penn State just in general. Michigan's coming off the college football playoff appearance. People think they've potentially jumped Penn State here in the Big Ten hierarchy. Obviously, with Penn State's second straight disappointing season, that's a reasonable take to have. This is that would be Penn State's opportunity to say, "Hey, we're still here. We're not dropping down. We're still a competitor in the Big Ten and can go up against the best of the best." But if Penn State gets past that game against Michigan, everything else is off the table, I think, and it would be intriguing. But still, if this is 5-1 Penn State, would it be 5-1 at that point? Yeah, if this is 5-1 Penn State versus 6-0 Minnesota or 5-1 Minnesota, that's still a really, really damn good game, and should be a great atmosphere.
It was my turn.
And then quickly, Minnesota, New Mexico State, Western Illinois, Colorado, Michigan State, Purdue, Illinois. I'm still a guy who's not huge on Michigan State. I think they're a good team. I don't think they're a great team. If they fell back a little bit, I wouldn't be shocked. But both teams there obviously have one game that Penn State 2 with Auburn. But 5-1, 6-0, I think you can't really complain about this matchup being a whiteout. Anthony?
All right, perfect. So it was just a big debate on forums and social media. Is the whiteout a night game or is the whiteout an opponent game? Everyone's kind of pretty split on it. Personally, I think that Minnesota was the right decision, and I actually made a quick bullet point list of 5 reasons why it is the right decision. I'm going to quickly go over them. I'm not going to waste everybody's time. So number one, I truly believe the whiteout belongs at night. As somebody who went to the Michigan whiteout in 2015, that was during the day. Everyone forgets about that one, and there's a reason everyone forgets about that one. It's because
if I take a minute to respond, my apologies. As we record this, Oregon State just landed a commitment, so working on figuring out who that is. So apologies if I take a minute to respond, but go back, Anthony. Go ahead.
Oh, don't you worry. I'll be chatting for about a couple minutes, so you'll be good. But as somebody who has been to the 2015 whiteout, there's a reason everyone forgets that was a whiteout. It's because it's just not the same during the day, like Dylan said. The 2016 whiteout and the 2017 whiteout were obviously special for different reasons. But even the 2018 whiteout where we lost, it was just a different atmosphere in that game. The fireworks going off before the game, the sea of white at night, it just looks different. It just feels different. So I truly believe the whiteout belongs at night more than it belongs against the best opponent, but everyone's going to disagree or everyone's going to debate that one to themselves. Number 2, and I think the biggest reason that this was the whiteout is because of the recruiting impact. And I think that because it's a night game, that allows 7 extra hours for these kids to travel to the stadium. And it's tough to get recruits to Beaver Stadium, in the middle of Pennsylvania for a noon game. I think you kind of cut your list in half, even with that being the Ohio State game, if you have the whiteout during the day. So that kind of creates 2 marquee games back to back to get your recruits to. And that was actually my point number 3, was you have the recruiting impact plus creating 2 marquee games for yourself to kind of give yourself a recruiting boost. Number 4, this game's kind of a trap game, like you said, with the schedule. It's sandwiched right in between Michigan and Ohio State. And depending on how they do at Michigan, if the team's looking ahead to Ohio State, Minnesota could easily fall into that area of do they show up or not. With this being a whiteout, that kind of goes off the table now. The team's absolutely going to show up for a whiteout. So now that kind of mitigates the idea of a trap game with Minnesota, who might be 5-1 or even 6-0 going into this game, like you said. So I think that plays a part. And number 5, you get to flip Fox the Bird a little bit, which is kind of fun. Fox trying to take the whiteout from us. Good for Penn State for taking it back and saying, no, we're going to set the whiteout when we want it at night when it's best.
Yeah, I from what I did hear there, I think you summed that up pretty greatly. That was a tremendous insight from you. Yeah, great job with that. Again, apologies. Literally, as we were recording this, Oregon State got a commitment, so I had to check on my sources of who that was, but got that handled. Marty, any final thoughts on the whiteout or stripe out?
No, I agree with you. Anthony said the whiteout's supposed to be at night. There's a reason for that. I mean, this is going back quite a ways, but I was at the 2011 whiteout against Alabama during the day. And, like I said, I'm very excited for my first nighttime whiteout game, because that daytime whiteout game against Alabama, I mean, albeit that Alabama team was much more talented than Penn State and just kind of, came out and stuck it to them from the get-go, but it wasn't the same. I've been in night games, Dylan, you and I were at the night game last year against Indiana, and that had a better atmosphere than that whiteout did against Alabama. There's just such a big difference between night and day. Yeah, I agree with all that, and congratulations to Oregon State. Hopefully this is a good commitment for the Beavers.
Yeah, well, besides that, I think that wraps up today's episode of Penn State Football 365. So if you made it through the entire podcast, thanks for listening. We had a great time recording our first episode here. We're going to be back next week with an episode. We're going to be recording these every week, hopefully through the off season and next off season. And during the season, we haven't broken it down yet. Might hopefully get 2 episodes a week, a preview and a recap, and then any emergency podcasts, of course, will also go up. Yeah, thanks everybody for listening. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at PSU FB365. You can follow us all individually on there as well. All our handles are in our profile bio. Don't forget to check out PennStateRivals.com, aka Nittany Nation, to get all your updated inside information on the Nittany Lions. We are getting a lot of golden recruiting nuggets out there recently, and they're going to just keep coming in, especially now that we're in official visit season. This is the fun time for us recruiting writers because it's nonstop. And plus we're in camp season, so a lot of great camp information out there. And it's just a fantastic time to be subscribed to Penn State Rivals, so you can get all that information. And if you go on our website and want to give us maybe you don't want to, put all your money towards it right away. You want to get a taste of it, sign up for a free trial. There's a 30-day free trial link that you can use. And if you like it enough and we can convince you to stay, then you can sign up for a full year. Yeah, be sure to check out the website. A lot of great information there. You're not going to want to miss it this month. Like I said, almost 40 official visitors. We're going to have a ton of information. It's going to come flying in every single day, pretty much from here until the end of the month and even beyond. Yeah, thanks everybody for listening to this first episode of the Penn State Football 365 podcast. Be sure to follow us on Twitter, subscribe to us on YouTube. We'll have all those links in the description of the podcast, and we'll talk to you guys real soon. Have a good one. Have a great first weekend of June, and we'll talk to you guys next week.